Hello and welcome back. We're now going to continue our exploration of which is object-oriented programming, right? So in the previous lesson, we spoke about classes and objects and also checked out how to implement inheritance and polymorphism, right? So inheritance is basically uh, the concept that the child inherits the attributes of the parent. So all the members, that is the attributes, and the methods, which are the functions, flow from the parent to the child, right? And polymorphism basically means that, like when you call a function with the same name and the same signature, there is an order in which Python looks to execute it. Like first it'll look in the subclass, then it'll look in the superclass, then it'll look in the Python general object, and so on. In this particular tutorial, we're going to look at encapsulation using access modifiers first, after which we'll look at using inheritance and polymorphism to extend core Python functionality. Okay, so let's look at encapsulation using access modifiers first. Now, what does encapsulation mean, right? It basically means data hiding, right? So it's a means by which the attributes of a class can be accessed only through a method of their own class. So if you remember in the previous video, I had spoken about this concept of getters and setters, right? So a getter method basically gets the value of a variable from a class, and a setter method sets the value of that variable within that class, right? And getters and setters are the most preferred way of dealing with variables that are exposed by the class, right? And all other variables should not be accessed directly. So the golden rule is never access class variables directly. Always use getters and setters, right? So encapsulation is like a protection mechanism, right? It prevents the data from being accessed or manipulated by outside code. So in Python, all attributes and methods of a class, they're public by default. Okay. So all you can do at this point is like a couple of things. One is you indicate that a variable was meant for private use, that is used within the class only and not to be accessed outside the class. Okay. The way you would indicate that is using a underscore, a single underscore before the variable name. Something like this, right? So that basically means that's an indicator to other programmers that this variable was defined only for use within this class. Do not access it outside this class and modify it directly. And this a double leading underscore, what it does is it tells the interpreter to use something called name mangling. Okay, so if I name a variable this way, right, with a double underscore at the start of the variable name, then the Python interpreter understands that, hey, this variable is not for outside access. So I'm going to implement something called name mangling. Okay. Name mangling basically means that another programmer cannot access this variable name using the plain variable name outside the class. Like you cannot do object name dot variable name in this case because I've used name mangling, right? So what name mangling does is it it changes the name in such a way that A, it cannot be accessed randomly by somebody just looking through the code, and B, it prevents conflicts with variables from other subclasses and so on. So the way you can actually access that name is you'd have the instance name, right, which is the object that's created of the class, then dot, then you'd have the underscore class name, right? In this case, underscore access levels, followed by the variable or method name, which is the double underscore var. So that's how the double underscore var shows up. This is exactly how it would show, right? So you have single underscore, then the class name, and then you have the name of the double underscore variable or method. Okay, so remember a couple of things. Encapsulation is a way of kind of this layer of protection around the data. Okay, and all you're saying is I don't want people to randomly access attributes and methods from outside the class. Like they should only be accessed within the class definition. Okay. If you want them to access it, you can expose those variables using getter and setter methods within the class. Now, if you use a single leading underscore in a variable name, it indicates to other programmers, and it only indicates, not like Python enforces anything. Okay. It's just an indicator and best practice that this variable is meant to be used within the class only and not accessed outside. A double leading underscore tells the interpreter to use name mangling. Okay, so the name is not easily usable in other code. But if somebody were to understand that you have used a double underscore variable, then they could say instance name dot underscore class name followed by the variable name to access that method directly. Okay, and if you use the dir command, that's dir of class name, you will get the entire list of methods and attributes, and even this particular attribute will show up. So let me show you this with an example, right? It's much easier to understand. So let's say we have a class called access levels, right? And in the access levels class, I'm initializing three variables. Now, one of them is a normal variable with no underscores before the name. One of them is a single underscore variable, right? Which basically I'm saying indicates that this is meant for private use within the class. And the third one is a double underscore variable, which tells the Python interpreter to use name mangling. Okay. And these are obviously instance attributes because they're related to the instance of this class. Now, I have a single underscore method here, which again tells the other user that this method is used within this class. You don't need to access it directly outside. Okay. And then there's a double underscore method where I'm indicating that it's for use within the class and I want to make it harder for you to access outside the class. So I'm going to tell the interpreter to use name mangling. So if I instantiate an object of this class, access levels, right? Now I can print x.public_var directly, right? This is the public variable. Now I can also change its value and I can print the new value, no problem, okay? You need to understand that the single underscore and double underscore is just an indication. It's not like enforcement, okay? So if I say single underscore variable printed out, it'll print just fine. I can change its value, it'll change just fine, and then I can print it out again, no problem, okay? And I can even call this single underscore method from within this class, this particular method, because all I've done is I've indicated don't use it outside the class. It's for private use only, but it cannot be enforced. Now that brings us to the question of the double leading underscore variables, right? So if I do dir of x, I get the entire list of attributes and methods, and including the double underscore variables and methods. And the way I access it through this object is I first say object dot underscore class name followed by the double underscore variable name, right? So I can print it out that way, and I can also call this method using the same thing. So I say x dot underscore access levels, which is the underscore class name, and then double underscore method name, which has a double underscore at the beginning. Okay. Now I can also create a subclass. So I say class sub access levels, which has access levels, the previous class, as its superclass, right? Its base class. So here I define a constructor. I call the superclasses constructor, and now I define a new variable which is local to this particular subclass with a double underscore var. So if you think about it, I have a double underscore var name here. I have a double underscore var name here. Okay. And the value is double underscore variable in subclass. So I'll instantiate this class. Now I can access both the variables, the one in the subclass and the one in the superclass separately because I told you Python uses name mangling, right? So underscore access levels is the superclass, right? And this is the variable name in the superclass. Y dot underscore sub access levels is the subclass. And then it's the same variable name in the subclass. But just on account of name mangling, I don't have a name conflict over here. Okay, so you can also use, it's not just about preventing access uh, to a particular variable or method, it's also about avoiding name conflicts. So remember, it's good programming practice to name variables or methods which are not meant for external use with single and double leading underscores, right? As in when you need. But if the programmer wants to access them, he or she can. Okay, so let me just run this code and show you how it works. Let's copy this, paste it here, and you can see that what I've done in the beginning is I've accessed the public variable, I've changed its value, I've printed it out. I've accessed the single underscore variable, changed its value, printed it out, and also the single underscore method, right? Which is prints this message. And finally, using the dir function, I saw how I can access the double underscore variable. I printed its value, I changed its value, and I printed it again. And I also accessed the double underscore method over here. Then I defined a new subclass. I created a new variable which has a naming conflict. So the variable in the subclass has the same name as the variable in the superclass. But thanks to name mangling, I can access both of them separately. So let me run it and show you. Here we go. So the first print statement here gives us public var, then we change its value and we give the new value of public var, right? These two things. Now, the next set of print statements gives you the single underscore variable, the new value, and also the single underscore method output, right? Which is these three things. Then we get to the double underscore part, which is double underscore variable in superclass and double underscore variable with the new value. And here we get the output from the double underscore method. Okay, so another thing, let's just say I want to create a new cell, right? And I've already created the variable x, right, that contains the superclass. So that is an instance of the superclass. So I'll say dir of x. And if I run that, you can see that the first two things here are underscore class name followed by double underscore method, underscore class name followed by double underscore var. So somebody can just type dir of x and figure out exactly how to access the methods. And here we have our single underscore method and var, which is just accessed normally. Cool. So I'll just comment out this particular line. Okay, so you've understood how uh, single underscore, double underscore work, right? So we'll now get to an exercise. Okay, create a variable, create a class called level1 that has two variables, var1 and var2, right? Name var1 in such a way that you indicate to other programmers that it's for internal use. Name var2 in such a way that you tell the Python interpreter to use name mangling. So in the first case, it's single underscore, second case, it's double underscore. Initialize them with the values 10 and 20 respectively. I have to create a method called hello world, which also uses name mangling. So this is the first class, right? Everything else says create a subclass. So let me just do this part first. Class level 1, right? Which has nothing that it derives from, no superclass. So now I'll say it has two variables, right? Variable 1 and variable 2. So, and let me say these are instance variables. So I'm going to define the init method, which is the constructor, which takes self, right, as the argument. So I'm going to say self dot var1 equal to 10, right? And I have to indicate that var1 is for internal use. So I'll use a single underscore. Self dot var2 equal to 20, right? I have to initialize that, but I have to name it in such a way that I tell the Python interpreter to use name mangling. So double score. Now create a method called hello world which uses name mangling. So I'm going to say def hello world, right, which takes self as an argument, and let's say it prints out the message hello world, and I again want to use name mangling, so I'm going to say double underscore to start the method name. That's it. That's my class, right? I've defined it. Now let's move on to the next part of the exercise. Create a subclass of level 1 called level 2, which has a variable called var2. And you can see the var2 and var1, var2 and in the subclass and var2 in the superclass have the same name, right? Var2 also employs name mangling. Initialize var2 with the value 200. Create a method called hello world, which also uses name mangling. Okay, so this is part 2 of the exercise. So I'll say class level 2, which is a subclass of level 1, right? So I'm going to create this constructor, the init method, which takes self as an input. Now, in that, I'm initializing one variable which uses name mangling. It's called var2, and I'm initializing the value 200, right? I am also defining hello world, which uses name mangling. So underscore underscore hello world, which takes self, and print hello world. Okay, so we have two classes, level 1, which is a superclass, level 2, which is a subclass. Now level 2 has a variable that is an attribute and a method which have the same name as the variable and attribute from the superclass. So let's see how we can like use them separately. So create objects of type, so I'll say L1 equal to level 1, and what do I pass to the constructor? Nothing, right? It only takes self as the argument. So I'll say print. How would I access variable 1 underscore variable 1 of level 1? I would just say dot underscore var1, right? So print L1 dot underscore var1. Actually, what I'd do even before that, let me just move this to the next line. I would just say dir of x or print dir of x, right? And it gives me all these values. So I can see the underscore methods, right? Oh, sorry, underscore, not x, L1. So you can see that underscore var1 is right at the end, right? And this is the single underscore variable that I defined over here. And all I need to do is object name dot this variable name. And here I can see that there's underscore level 1, which is underscore class name, followed by the double underscore variable name, which is in this case the method hello world, right? Similarly, there's also underscore level 1 with double underscore var2, which is the attribute. So I can access all of these using the names shown here in dir. So let me just comment out that line and then start printing out the variable name. So L1 dot underscore var1, right, which is the single underscore method. L1 dot underscore class name, that is level 1, and followed by double underscore var2, right, which is the attribute name. And finally, L1 dot, actually no, that's it. And then I'll call the L1 dot hello world method separately. And now this also has a double underscore, so I need to access it using that special way. which is got from the dir method, right? And it's just a method that doesn't return anything, so I need to execute it. Now I can do the same thing for L2 also, right? I'll create L2, which is a new object of type level 2. It also doesn't take anything as the input. It initializes its attribute where2 underscore where2 to 200, and it has a hello world method. So I'll say print L2 of, and here if I do dir of L2, let me just comment these two things out. Dir of L2, right? So I have these two names here, and it's showing you level 1 underscore hello world and level 2 underscore hello world because you have access to both of them. Level 2 dot hello world is what I can access directly. Level 1 dot hello world is there in the superclass. Then I also have level 2 and where 2, right? So these are the things accessible to me from as part of L2. So let's print out these things. L2 dot, since I used name mangling, I have to use a special way to access that variable. Now what I will also do is I'll call L2 dot level 2 hello world, this method, and it prints something, it doesn't return anything, so I'm gonna call it. And you can see that I can also access the superclasses method from here, right? Underscore level 1 underscore hello world. There we go. And I'm going to run that. So if I run it here, I can see that when I create L1, I get its first that underscore variable value, that's 10. I get its double underscore variable value, which is 20. I run its double underscore method using the special name access, and it prints hello world. Then I go to L2 and I print the value of the double underscore var2, which is the value of this similarly named variable, but from the subclass, not from the superclass. So in the superclass, its value was 20, but in the subclass, its value is 200. And then I call the hello world methods for both the subclass and the superclass, right? Yeah. So that's how access modifiers work. Okay. Remember, Python does not enforce anything. If you use a double underscore, it uses name mangling. If you use a single underscore, it just indicates to other programmers that that variable is supposed to be private. But as a best practice, expose getters and setters for variables that you want the another programmer to change, but in a safe way. Cool. So now let's move on to using inheritance and polymorphism to extend Python functionality. Okay, so what do I mean by extend Python functionality? Like in the first case, I could define my own exception, like a custom exception, right? So I'm extending Python's functionality to suit my own needs. Another one is I could extend Python's built-in functionality to custom classes. So let me show you an example, right, of defining your own custom exceptions. Now, what I told you is every exception inherits from the exception class. So exception is like the base class for all types of errors, including indentation, syntax, uh, value error, type error, zero division, name error, all these things, right? It's the base class for all exceptions. Now, there are two possible drawbacks with these inbuilt exceptions, right? One is it typically takes some Python knowledge to decode them. And the second thing is sometimes the exception could be generic and not custom built for our purpose. Okay, so we can address those issues by defining our own exception. And when I say defining our own exception, I mean creating a new exception class that extends the Python's core exception class. So let's say we have a business use case where we ask somebody to input a positive integer, right? When if we let's say we then want to calculate the square of that integer and print out a custom message. And what we'll do is we'll define a custom exception that will be raised if the user inputs anything other than a positive integer. So basically, it should be greater than or equal to 1. So we create the wrong input type error class, and there are two methods, and we've already spoken about polymorphism and overriding, right? So we will override two methods. And what that means is we will re-implement them in a way that suits us. Okay. So the exception class has its own init method, it has its own string method, right? Which so init you already know is a constructor, right? The string method is basically the double underscore prefix suffix with string in between. That is the method that tells Python what to print if this particular object is passed to the print function. Okay, so these methods are already implemented in the exception class, but by creating a new exception that extends the original exception, I'm now redefining these two methods in a way that suits me. Okay, so I'm using inheritance and polymorphism simultaneously. Inheritance because it's extending the exception class, and polymorphism because I'm using the same argument name and signature, and it's doing an entirely different function. So I've also told you there is something called a docstring, right? Just like a function has a docstring, a class also has a docstring. So if user types help of uh, and passes this class name or an object of this class name, then this is the message that gets shown, telling the user what this class is about, right? So it's the exception thrown when the user is asked to provide a numeric input, but provides another type of input instead. Now, in the constructor, we know that self is the first argument, and let's say it takes a variable number of arguments, right? So it could take, like, let's say there's already an exception being thrown through multiple layers of the function that's been accumulating arguments at each level. So it would have 2 to 3 arguments, right? It could have zero also. So I'm just saying star of args. I already told you about how to accept a variable number of positional arguments, right? And args is basically a tuple, right? So it could be 0, it could be 1, it could be 2, whatever. Now, if args, that is, if there is an argument, I'm going to initialize an instance attribute called message, right? So self.message equal to the first element in the args tuple. If args is empty, then I will initialize this attribute with a value that I define, not a value which is passed. Okay, so that's the meaning of this function. If there are arguments passed, so typically I would create a new exception and I would pass a string to it, right? That string is basically a message. So it sees that args is not empty and it'll set this exception's message to that message which I supplied. If I have not supplied a message, then it'll use this default message. Okay. Now the string function returns the string representation of what should get printed out when I pass this object to the print function. So it returns this message, exception wrong input type error, and the message is self plus message, which I initialized over here. So it's a very simple class, right? All I'm doing is defining the init method and defining the string method. So what I'll do is I'll create a number, right, which takes an input from the user. And let's say we take an input whose a number whose square we want to calculate, right? And there is a string method called isNumeric, right? To basically tell us if the string contains basically the string representation of an integer. So the string returns true if for the isNumeric method only if all the characters of the string are numbers between 0 and 9. So print, in that case, I know it's a legitimate input from the user and I print this value, right? Number entered is num square. And this should throw an error because num square is, I mean, that would indicate num is an integer, but I need to convert it to int first and then square it. Int of num square, right? And then I need to convert that to a string because I'm concatenating it with a string, right? Okay. Else, I raise this wrong input type error and I pass a message to it. Okay. And if I raise this wrong input type error without passing a message to it, then it would have put its own message in here, right? Here. Cool. So let me run this and show you. I'm going to paste it here. If I run it, if I enter a legitimate input, let's say 50, it gives me the square of 50, right? Which is here. But if I enter a wrong input, let's say I run it again and I say ABC, right? It throws a wrong input type error, which is a new uh, custom class that I have defined, right? A wrong input type error which extends exception, right? And it prints this custom message which I passed over here. And the message that I had passed to this instance was here. Please enter an int bro, right? That's the message that's shown. So you've seen how to create a new exception type that extends the Python's base exception by overriding a couple of its methods, right? Whichever methods you need, you can override. Then we accepted a input from the user. We checked if that input string was numeric. Then we converted that string to an int and back to a string after calculating the square. And if the input is wrong, we raise this new type of exception with a custom message. Now, if I commented this line out and I uncommented the next line, it raises the wrong input type error with no custom message, right? So this was a custom message that I passed, but it won't pass a custom message in this case. It'll pass this generic message. Okay, so let me run it and show you that. Let's say ABC again. Again, wrong input type error, but in this case, the message is please enter an input with the correct data type, which is the generic message we defined in the constructor. Okay, so let's do an exercise to cement our understanding. Write code that prompts the user to enter a number until they correctly guess a hidden stored number, which in our case is 120. After each guess, provide them with a hint of whether the guess is too high or too low. Create two new exception classes, one for when the guess is too low and one for when the guess is too high. Let the hints to the user be triggered on catching these custom exceptions. Okay, so remember, there's the variable 120, right? Let me just say v equals 120. Now, I'm creating two new exception classes, one for value too high, one for value too low. So let me create those classes first. Value too high, right? And it extends from the exception class. So it is a type of exception, but a specific type of exception. So I'll define the init method, which is the constructor. And let's say it could potentially take arguments, right? And it has a variable number of arguments. Now, if there is an argument, if args, then I'm going to say self dot exception message equal to args of 0, which is the first item in that tuple. Else, if there's no exception message, I'll say self dot exception message equal to the value you entered is too high. Okay. Now I'm going to have another method, which is the underscore string method that just converts this object into its string representation, right? So I'm going to return value to high exception, right? The message is, and I'll say plus self dot exception message, right? So that's my value too high exception class. So let me copy the same thing. The value too low is also very similar. I'm just going to rename a couple of things. And I'm going to say the same thing here. The value we entered is too low. And here also value too low exception. Yep. So we have a value too high exception class. We have a value too low exception class. We have the init and the string methods for both of them. And now we're going to throw this error, one of these two errors, every time the value is not equal to 120. And then on catching that error, we're going to print a custom message, right? To tell the user what to do next. So now I'm going to say, uh, while true, right? I'm going to create this infinite while loop. So I could have either said while one or while true. IP equal to input, or let's say int of input, guess the correct number, okay, to the user. So the user is going to guess a number, and I'll say if IP equal to 120, then print you guessed correctly, and you can break from the loop, right? Now, else if IP greater than 120, I'm going to raise the value to high exception, right? Raise value to high, and I'm going to pass a custom message to it. The value you entered is too high, okay? And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this entire thing in a try except, right? And finally, the else clause, where this is what happens if the value is less than 120. I'm going to raise the value to low exception with the message. The value entered is too low. Okay. So this while loop keeps running till they guess the right number. If they guess it right, great. If they don't guess it right, I either throw a value too high or a value too low exception depending on the case. Now I'm catching this exception in the except block, right? So if I catch value too low, then I can say print. Actually, I want this while loop to keep running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the try block inside the while loop. I'm going to say try here, and this part I'm going to indent and say it's a part of the except, right? So this part of the code I'm putting in a try, and if I catch a value too low exception, I'm going to print enter a higher value. And if I catch a value too high exception, then I print enter a lower value. Okay, so let me run it and see what happens. So I've defined these two classes, and I keep looping around till the person guesses the right number. Okay, so and guess the correct number. Let me say 100. So what happened is this number, this clause, the else clause got triggered. This I can also print, right? Inside the except clause for value too low. And similarly, inside the except clause for value too high. Okay, so if I run this now, sorry. Okay, I had not completed that run the last time. So I'm going to interrupt the kernel, right? That's basically a way to tell Python stop running that infinite while loop. Just going to restart the kernel now because I was running an infinite while loop. Let me just see what's happening here. It says the kernel's been restarted. So let me just run this code now. Cool, it's running fine. So guess the correct number. Let me say 110. It inside the except clause for value too low. So basically it came into this condition. It threw a value too low exception. It got caught over here. It printed out these two values and came back into the while loop, right? So now I have to guess the correct number. So now let me guess too high. So now it's come into this particular clause because it threw this exception, value too high. Okay, so now let's enter the correct number and it says you guessed correctly and the while loop is now terminated. Okay, so what we've done is we've extended Python's core functionality by defining new exceptions that are suitable for our particular business case. Now let's move on to the next thing, right? So let's say we want to extend Python's built-in functionality to custom classes, right? So in a sense, what is Python's built-in functionality? Like you have all these operators, plus, minus, into, divide, all that stuff, right? Uh, we can extend those operations to new methods and to new objects and have them behave exactly how we want them to, right? So these things are called magic methods or dunder methods. Okay, dunder basically stands for double under, that is double underscore, right? And they have their prefix as two underscores and their suffix also as two underscores. Now we've already seen init, right? Which is the is the code to initialize the object, right? It's the constructor function. Now string underscore string is basically for the string representation when we pass it to the print function. Add, subtract, multiply, true division, all these are for the arithmetic operations. Underscore len is what we use for the number of items in the collection. And these are all the operators for the arithmetic operators, right? The not arithmetic, sorry, the comparison operators. So underscore eq is equality, gt is greater than, lt is less than, ge is greater than equal to, le is less than equal to. Okay. So if I were to kind of create a new class that extends an existing Python class, and I were to redefine these methods using overriding and polymorphism, then I can create new behavior for new objects, right? Or the same behavior for new objects. So let's say I create a class called custom string, right? Which extends the Python string class, str. So I'm defining two methods here, right? Underscore init, double underscore init, which takes one value, right? And it initializes itself to that value. So when you create a constructor, you pass something within that constructor. But it has to take one value. You cannot pass zero values. Okay. And we also put the add method, double underscore add, where I can add two custom strings. And in this case, what it returns is not one string concatenated to the other. So if I say string one dot add, or string one plus string two, right? And other is the custom string object, which is a separate object, right? So I have my self object and I have the other object. So I return the length of self plus the length of other. So it's changing the default functionality of strings, right? So in strings, if I do string one plus string two, I get a concatenated string. In this case, I get the length of their strings totaled up. So if I say CS1 is custom string with the value string one, right? CS2 is a custom string containing its value as string number 2. Now, if I print CS1 plus CS2, what do I get? I get the length of this string plus the length of this string. Okay. So let's run this code and see what happens. So I'm going to run it and I get 22. So the length of this is 7 and the length of this is 15. So what you've seen is I'm using inheritance to extend an existing class. Then I'm using polymorphism to override certain methods to now create custom functionality for this new class. Okay, so let's do an exercise and see how it works. Create a class called reversed integer. Class reversed int. Okay, that takes an integer value, right? So right now it looks like it doesn't extend anything, so that's fine. The arithmetic operations for this class should be reversed. That is, plus should mean minus, minus should mean plus, divide should mean multiply, multiply should mean divide. Okay. Take two integer values as input from the user to create two separate reversed int objects and then perform all these new operations. So what am I going to do here, right? So I have to create 5 methods. One is the init method that initializes this object, and 4 others are the underscore multiply, underscore true division, underscore subtract, and underscore add, where I'm redefining what these operations mean. So first I'll say def init, right, which takes self and another value, an integer value. I'll say self dot val equal to value. I'm going to define the addition class, or rather redefine the addition class to mean subtraction, right? So I already have self. I'm going to add another value, right? Other. So I'm going to, what do I return? I return self dot val minus other dot val. So this my current object, that's self's val attribute minus others val attribute, right? That's what I'm returning for add. So I'm performing the subtract operation with add. If I say define sub in a similar way, taking other, I'm returning the opposite, right? Self dot val plus other dot val. Now if I say define multiply, taking self other, I'm returning division operations output, right? Return self dot val divided by other dot val. And finally, there's so div doesn't work anymore. The thing we have to use is true div. Okay, and self comma other. I'll say return self dot val into other dot val, because now we're reversing division and multiplication, right? So I've created my reversed int class. Now I'm going to take two integer values as input from the user, create two of these objects and run all these different operations between them. So I'll say ri1 equal to int of input from the user, saying enter number 1, right? And then I'm going to say similar message for enter number 2, and I'm going to call it ri2, reversed int 2. Okay. Uh, and what I'll do is I'll wrap these two inputs into the reversed int constructor so that I create the correct kind of object. Reversed int of this value. So I'm creating two new reversed integers, and I'm now going to print out the result of all these operations. So ri1 plus ri2, comma, this up. Let me just say ri1 plus ri2, print ri1 minus ri2, print ri1 into ri2, and print ri1 divided by ri2. So let's run this and see what we get. Okay, so the first number, let's say, is 20, second number is 10, and it throws a name error. Where RI2, sorry. So 20 and 10, and you can see what's happened here, right? So when I say RI1 plus RI2, instead of doing an addition, it's done subtraction, because in this add method, I said it's equal to self.val minus other.val. Similarly, for subtraction, it's done addition. For multiplication, it's done division. For division, it's done multiplication, right? So we've reversed what the operations mean. Now, in this case, we reversed it, but in any other case, we can like extend, uh, like for example, take the case of the integer plus string not being allowed, right? So if we created a new object, we could allow for integer plus string to get concatenated. So we can define anything we want in using these overriding methods, the double underscore methods. Remember, they're called magic methods because they give you pretty much access to the core functionality of Python. Okay, so we've seen how to like create custom exceptions. We've also seen how to use inheritance and polymorphism to extend Python's built-in functionality to custom classes. Okay, so that brings us to the end of object-oriented programming. I hope you found this module useful. So just to recap, we've seen classes versus objects. We've seen what inheritance is, where the child inherits the attributes from the parents. We've seen subclasses and superclasses. We've seen polymorphism, which is where methods have the same name and signature, but Python chooses which method to execute at runtime. So we can kind of override the functionality, the default functionality of Python using this, right? We also saw how to use encapsulation using access modifiers, that single underscore and double underscore, which implements name mangling. And finally, we defined our own exception classes, and we also created new classes that kind of extend Python's functionality. So we created this reversed int class that kind of reversed what the normal integer operations are. Okay. So see you in the next module. Take care.